This is the astrology forecast for May 15 to May 20. And we have some interesting developments because Mercury, the Sun, Venus, and Mars all change signs. Plus, we have a new moon in Taurus. So there's going to be a big energy shift that you feel within yourself because those are all personal planets. And last week, I talked about Thursday, May 14, when the Sun conjuncts Mercury at 23 degrees Taurus. And that is a Mercury cazimi that happens May 14, and that's when Mercury gets within 17 minutes of the Sun. And that intensifies Mercury's energy, and it brings in very powerful clarity, insight, and important realizations. And in Taurus, that energy feels grounded. It feels stabilizing and confident, helping you see a secure path forward after maybe confusion or uncertainty. So expect breakthroughs with Mercury conjunct Taurus. It's at 23 degrees. Expect meaningful conversation or a strong intuitive message or a clear answer. Maybe you get a very definitive yes or a very definitive no, and can finally sort of emerge from any uncertainty you've had. You get like this aha moment. That's Thursday, and that leads us into Saturday is our next major transit on May 16. Mars will conjunct Chiron. So you want to locate 28 degrees Aries in your chart. Now, Neptune and Saturn entered Aries in January and February this year, but Chiron has been in Aries since 2018, helping develop a stronger self-image, more courage, independence, and creative drive. So Chiron will be in Aries until May 15, 2027. Still working towards that, but she will dip into Taurus briefly this year, which we will talk about later. But Mars at 28 degrees Aries meets up with Chiron at 28 degrees Aries. And this is in the late degrees of Aries. It's activating more of what Chiron is accomplishing around those Aries themes in your life. So those Chiron energies will become heightened and more intense at 28 degrees and especially 29 degrees. Mars will agitate and kind of stir up what Chiron has been developing since 2018. And Chiron is called the wounded healer, and it represents your insecurities and your weaknesses, but also how you heal. It is your biggest wound, and Mars triggering Chiron can trigger the lower vibration of Mars, which is to get very heated and very angry and triggered by something that brings up a sensitivity or an insecurity. So beware of impulsively reacting to something that triggers your insecurities and weaknesses. The higher vibration of Mars is to get incredibly inspired, creative, and brave. The highest vibration for Chiron would be healing. So action, right? Mars brings action. Action might be the remedy or the antidote that you need to move past any insecurities or sensitivities that get triggered with Chiron. So for some people, Mars conjunct Chiron will highlight where you've already healed, represents inspired action, giving you inspiration and passion and courage and more enthusiasm and excitement to go for something. Now, Venus is moving into a sextile with both Mars and Chiron the following day, which could bring even more supportive energies in. Now, on the same day, though, just before that happens on Saturday, we also have a new moon. So the sun and the moon will be exactly at 25 degrees Taurus. So that's a new moon. And that is where the sun and the moon meet at 25 degrees Taurus. They start a new lunar cycle around the Taurus themes in your life. 25 degrees Taurus is the last decan of Taurus, where we have not only the sun and the moon, but also Mercury at 28 degrees Taurus. So this is the first new moon in Taurus in 7 years where Uranus was not co-present. But she is close by at 1 degree Gemini. So what new intentions do you want to set around the Taurus themes in your life? Because it's a new moon. It's about a fresh start. A new cycle between the sun and the moon has begun. And it culminates at the full moon. And then when they meet back up again in a new sign, it represents another new cycle. So what are you building in your Taurus house? What new intentions do you want to set? Taurus is a fixed earth sign that wants stability and peace and wants to build something that lasts, that feels secure. And they want to be able to attain the life they want. Taurus is associated with your lifestyle. You know, you want to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Those are the things that Taurus wants. So are you setting a new intention around some of those themes? Now, Venus in Gemini is the ruler of the new moon, and she's forming a sextile to Chiron. This is where the new moon will happen. And then you have Chiron and Mars forming a sextile with Venus, the ruler of the new moon. And let's see here. Let's skip ahead to the new moon, which is May 16. And here you can see 25 degrees. Then you have Venus 27 working into create a sextile here. And that's going to play out with the new moon vibes. It's going to be helpful and supportive. And this also brings in relationship energies because Mars and Venus are about relationships. Chiron also plays a heavy role in relationship energies and healing. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, what are you building? What do you value? How do you want to spend your time, energy, and money, and with whom? What relationship patterns have you healed? Taurus wants to simplify things and focus on the essentials, and that's based on what you truly value. So this is about saying no to what does not align with your core values. Taurus wants us to build up a strong core inner strength. And the opposite of Taurus is Scorpio, which is about how other people feel and what other people are doing and about merging with other people. That's what Scorpio is about. So that Taurus energy helps us remember what matters to us and to call our energy back. Remember what we value and not allow ourselves to be pulled into the orbs, into other people's orbs, especially if it's not aligned with you and where you're going. So it's a reminder to cut cords from anything that is toxic or complicated in our lives, bringing division or fear, and simplify, because that's what this new moon is about, because that's what Taurus is about. Now, Mercury is at 28 degrees Taurus, and it wants to stabilize things, right? Simplify communication, be clear about thoughts and ideas, stick to what's tried and true, Stick to what works. Be clear about the plans. Mercury being only 2 degrees away from entering Gemini and being conjunct this Uranus, that's enlightenment, sudden understanding, especially around a practical matter. And then the next day, let's see here. The next day, Mercury enters Gemini and will conjunct Uranus that same day. And that symbolizes a shift from fixed earth to mutable air. And there will be much more movement and speed around all those Gemini things. Because now you have Mercury and the Uranus and Venus and the moon in Gemini. So that's just much more emphasis on, it's fast talking energy, fast thinking, more curiosity. The mind is more restless when Mercury's in Gemini. Communication is more social and open and playful and curious. People want variety. They want to be busy. They want to be active. They're more restless. This puts an emphasis on contracts and commerce and sales and travel, education, appointments, and the things we have to take care of every day. So expect to be making more connections during this time, more socialness. Now, that new moon from the day before is like a fresh start with the Taurus themes. So Mercury going into Gemini helps get things moving, share ideas, connect with others. What new intention did you set at the new moon? How can Mercury help put that into action, connect you with other people? There could be a big breakthrough. There could be enlightenment with Mercury conjunct Uranus, downloads. It enhances your clairvoyance, all the clairs. Be open to the messages you receive about what is next. Now, on that same day, which is just Sunday, Venus will sextile Chiron exactly. It was building at the new moon. And when Venus gets to 28 degrees Gemini, she makes a sextile to Mars and Aries in Chiron. And Venus in Gemini is the ruler of that new moon, remember? And this sextile to Chiron brings up something positive, a development around a relationship or spending matter. Maybe setting a new intention. Mars is still conjunct Chiron. So when Venus enters the conversation, that brings in support, something helpful, especially if Mars triggered something. It could be a remedy to what was triggered with Mars. It could be money, a new relationship, a pleasant interaction, or social event. If you're in a relationship, you find new ways to heal so the relationship can grow. So be aware of how you're healing and be aware of how far you've come and in what ways your ego has evolved. Because of that healing energy from Chiron, you may have developed a stronger self-image, more courage, more independence. Maybe you're still developing your self-image and your sense of confidence. And this represents how you're moving into a new phase of that development, where you can see how much you've grown. Maybe you're stepping into more independence, more courage. Now, the following day is Monday, May 18. Mars starts separating from Chiron and has now entered Taurus, and Venus has moved ahead and entered Cancer. This is a big energy shift in our personal attitudes. Mars is going to affect our drive and our energy levels, like what's catching your eye, what you're going after. And Venus is going to affect spending and relationship matters. Now, both Mars and Venus are connected to what we desire, what we want out of life, relationship energies. So that shifts as well. Mars in Taurus, it should be positive too, because Mars in Taurus is Mars is comfortable in Taurus. It's focused on practical matters, money, job. It puts an emphasis on what you value, on spending, on budgeting, finances, overall security. And Mars does well in Taurus because Mars wants a job. And in Taurus, he's like, okay, focus on the essentials, establish security and stability in what you're building. Focus on simplify things and focus on what matters. And with Venus entering Cancer, that puts an emphasis on how you feel and how you seek emotional security. So that's going to bring in some harmony and pleasure and satisfaction and blessings to your Cancer house. So relationships take a softer tone, more focused on home, family, private life. Venus wants to make things more beautiful. So you could redecorate your home, go on a family trip, spend time with people that make you feel safe, secure. And with Mars in Taurus, it's very compatible with Venus in Cancer because they make a sextile to one another. So, and that goes exact the following day on Tuesday, May 19th at 0 degrees Cancer and 0 degrees Taurus. So this is an opportunity for you to build on your relationship. We just had the new moon. Now the relationship planets move into new signs and make a beautiful sextile. This is really positive for building on your relationship or partnership, business agreement. It's also very supportive for sexual chemistry, affection, socializing, romantic or platonic. You can meet someone, you can hit it off with someone. Venus is a blessing and it brings in harmony and ease and pleasure and satisfaction. So expect a boost Tuesday, May 19. If you're going to purchase something, maybe it's something that helps establish more financial security because Mars in Taurus wants to build something strong and reliable. Venus in Cancer wants something that provides emotional security. So it can be positive for providing more stability and more support, especially in your private life. And if you're an artist or a creative person, you might get like a spark of inspiration. Venus sextile Mars can do that. Maybe you want to share your work with somebody. Maybe it gets well received. So very positive for creativity and inspiration. Now, Mercury is now at 3 degrees Gemini and is going to make aspects to Neptune, the North Node, and Pluto. So locate 3 degrees Gemini and Aries in your chart. That's where Mercury sextiles Neptune. And Mercury, Neptune opens up Mercury's mind to something higher ideals, spiritual growth, imagination. And if you felt restless or anxious, this sort of allows you to let go a little, maybe escape into art or fantasy or movies or reading, poetry, writing, daydreaming, anything that allows you to access higher messages, see the bigger picture, or release and let go. When Mercury aspects Neptune, it can be hard to pinpoint details, or make a decision. So you want to think about how you're taking in information and, because Mercury's about how you take information and it's how you learn and communicate. And Neptune is it's about your psychic abilities, and so maybe quiet the mind and listen instead of focusing on details, focus on what you're sensing, a higher message possibly. And then that same day, Mercury moves ahead to 4 degrees Gemini, just a few hours later, and makes an exact square to the North Node at 4 degrees Pisces. And that brings in information that requires a compromise because the square creates tension. So that North Node in Pisces wants you to go higher, tap into your intuition, what you're sensing, have faith that things will work out. And, ask yourself, is there something I need to let go of and release and move on from? So you may be faced with a choice, an important choice, when Mercury squares the North Node at 4 degrees. Gemini and Pisces. And then a few hours after that, Mercury moves to 5 degrees Gemini and makes a supportive trine to Pluto, who's retrograde at 5 degrees Aquarius. And that helps you see an important truth. Maybe something that you had overlooked before or didn't tune into. Now it comes through crystal clear. And you have an understanding of not only what's ending, but what you want to move towards. And let's see, I'm going to skip ahead here to Five degrees Gemini. That Mercury. So Mercury with Pluto, Mercury's about words and Pluto's about power. So your words have greater weight and there could be movement on an important conversation, something related to those Gemini themes of travel, education, contracts, sales, daily life. How do you get along regularly? Do you walk, bike, drive? Do you fly a lot? Where do you live? And who are the people that you talk to regularly? How is that transforming? And that's what Pluto trine Mercury is. It helps you see an important truth and how things are transforming. So Mercury interacts with Neptune, allowing you to see the bigger picture, tap into what you're sensing. Then it squares the North Node in Pisces, more letting go, more trust, more moving on. Maybe you have to make a choice. And then Mercury trines Pluto, and you see an important truth. You see the truth, something you didn't tune into, and things get clear. And this is all part of the Pluto transformation. Now, the following day, on May 20th, the sun enters Gemini, another energy shift. Sun in Gemini is going to illuminate all those Gemini themes even more now. So what is powerfully changing around your Gemini house that you need to see? The sun shines a light to illuminate where you can find purpose, build confidence, and express your talents for the next 30 days. So creatively, this can be a time where you publish something, you speak publicly, you write something. Because Gemini is all about writing, publishing, speaking, learning, education. Mercury Cazimi was at that 23 degrees Taurus. That was where the sun and Mercury met around those Taurus themes, where you brought in a powerful idea or a breakthrough moment. Now they're in Mercury together. And they're just increasing the pace of daily life and how our minds are processing information. Gemini wants mental stimulation, wants to stay busy and curious, variety, change, novelty. It wants to get movement on things. It wants to be playful, though. It wants to be light. So it's a good time to meet with other people, share your ideas, socialize, but in a way that is not taking a huge investment, because Gemini wants to sample. So like a cooking class, a painting class. Gemini likes working with her hands and is about travel. and movement. So you might take a bike ride, go hiking, gardening. Maybe you take a short trip to see family, friends. Or maybe you plan a trip for the summer when the kids get out of school. Gemini is also about education and young people and children. So if you have kids or you yourself are graduating, for example, there could be end of school activities and plans that result in an increase in like daily activities and responsibilities and planning and appointments. So it could be a busy time. And, overall, you have that big breakthrough with Mercury Cazimi on Thursday. Then big shifts in the energy because Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the Sun all change signs. Mars enters Taurus, Venus enters Cancer and joins Jupiter. Mercury and the Sun enter Gemini, join Uranus, which highlights those Gemini themes even more since Uranus entered. So the Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer area of your chart, very active. And then, of course, we have Pluto, who's retrograde in Aquarius, bringing in a slow but powerful change. And be aware that we are moving through energies that are going to force us to rely on our intuition, not analyzing something to death. So you have to trust and you have to have a strong inner core to rely on and a strong sense of values. So making decisions is easier because you may be forced to make decisions faster, especially with these Gemini energies, all the air energies and the fire energies, the Aries. So keep that in mind. And that wraps up the entire week. So be open to breakthroughs and be open to change and fast moving energies and know that everything is working out for your highest good. Thank you and take care and see you next week.